Okay, we to call the August 10th meeting of the Planning and Traffic Commission meeting to order. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, which I will lead. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'll let the record reflect that all the planning and traffic commissioners are in attendance tonight, and we'll go directly to public comments.
Heiko Peschel.
Good evening, Madam Chair and everyone else. Heiko Peschel for Perel Avenue Foothill Ranch. With just a few notes, and since they're not indicated on anything on the agenda tonight, they're sort of general notes. I know the Nicasio Brothers conversion to housing has not shown up here yet on any agenda, or at least not as far as I know. But I did go to their presentation over here at Baker Ranch a while back, and I have a couple comments to make about what they have envisioned. Their vision calls for a school at the corner of Baker and Rancho, which is probably as far away as to their intended customers as they could put it, unless they put it on the Lake Forest side. I would think that it would do them much better if they put it at Bake and Dimension at the top of the area, where the kids who come from Baker Ranch could literally just walk across one street to get there. The same thing with their senior housing, which they now have planned for the top up here at Bake and Dimension. It would do much better along the bottom side along Rancho, because what do those senior folks do? They shop. Where do they shop? In Foothill Ranch, I hope. And if all they have to do is cross Rancho Parkway or Bake Parkway to get to the stores, restaurants, theaters, and whatever they need, that would certainly make life a lot more convenient for them. Okay, that was the first one. Traffic lights. To Mr. Rogers and Tom Wheeler and all the folks. It seems to me that over the last few years, the lights are staying green longer in the main direction. The left turn lights are staying green much longer than they need to be to convey the traffic that wants to turn left and or make a U-turn than they used to. The other thing is I've noticed that going down Bake Parkway in the morning, the inbound traffic gets the left turn first, and the outbound traffic gets it last, and then that reverses in the evening. That may look like it's fun, but it tends to confuse the customer who's always trying to figure out how to do it the same way each time. Another one is the left turn from Bake to Rockfield, which we do to go to Pepino's, is during the week, the left turn toward the freeway in the evening is just before the red light. On the weekends, it's right after the light turns green. So the other one is code enforcement. Would be nice to see if we could see more on weekends, especially for real estate signs. There's a plethora of those suckers out there, and they don't need nearly as many as they have. And guess what? The red light's going to get me. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. So do we have any public comments, more public comments tonight? And then we'll go right into our presentation item from the Public Works Department.
Yes, our first item this evening is the Public Works Project Quarterly Update, and Dave Rogers is here with this report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commission members. This is just your quarterly update, as Gail mentioned, just to let you know what we're working on. I will note that as we move forward, we have a lot of new projects that the Council has as part of the latest 2-year CIP, many of which are traffic related, so you'll start to see the traffic section in here get a little more populated with some of those items. One in particular, we've been tasked with implementing we'll call it a temporary dedicated right turn lane for eastbound Bake at Trabuco. So that is one of the priority projects that they have for us. Originally, in the 2-year CIP, we had a project to widen Bake right there, but the council felt that they wanted something a little bit more, or something quickly implemented out there, so we're going to do some restriping and some minor median modification to get that dedicated right turn lane in. We actually are ending up sacrificing one of the left turn lanes in the opposite direction. We're actually going to take one of those lanes and move everything over in the eastbound direction and then shift them all back. So you'll see a little bit different configuration out there. So that's just an example of one of the projects that you'll see on your list and some of the work you'll be seeing out there in the real world. Obviously, if you have any questions or specific concerns about any of those projects, feel free to contact me in any way you feel appropriate. But like I said, this list will start to expand to cover many of those new projects that we have that are traffic and transportation related. Other than that, if you have any specific questions on any specific projects, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Just real quick on the Bake and Trabuco right turn lane. It was that way, I think, years ago, and then it switched back. What's going to be different now than it was back then?
Yeah, back in 2006, we actually had to do the research to make the presentation to the council. It was 2 through lanes and a dedicated right turn lane. So you had 3 lanes approaching Trabuco. The number 3 lane, the one closest to the curb, became a dedicated right. So when traffic patterns and volumes changed, it became a through right, so you had the option of going through as well as right in that lane. So the project that we originally presented to the council was to widen Bake Parkway right there in front of that little shopping center, the El Pollo Loco Center, and just, I'll call it, just add a dedicated right turn lane and keep the 3 through lanes. The council was concerned that that project, because it does involve acquisition of right-of-way, that there could be issues with that, sometimes causing projects to drag on, and there was a belief that we needed a dedicated right turn lane, and certainly staff agreed with that. In the PM peak period, 90% of the people in that number 3 lane turn right. So there was a need for that, and there was also a need for the 3 through lanes. And so they asked us to come back with some ideas about what we'll call a temporary fix out there, and we analyzed a couple of different ways to look at it, and ultimately decided, or at least presented, our recommended or preferred option, which was to basically shift the 3 through lanes towards the center of the median, creating space for a dedicated right, and then cross the intersection and then shift you back over again. And that, it's probably about a $100,000 project by the time we're done, because we do have to do some median modifications and some other things. We ran some traffic modeling for it. It does seem to work fine. The opposing double left actually has very little volume overall, relatively speaking, and so in the short term, we think we can sacrifice one of those left turn lanes. The future project is still to pursue the dedicated right turn lane and actually even add a second left in the eastbound direction, because that can occasionally back up in the morning. So there's a much larger project in the future, but in the short term they asked us to do that. We expect that project to take about 6 months to complete, depending on factors that are sometimes out of our control. But that was their ask, and we were able to come up with that project. So we'll start tracking that as part of your quarterly update.
Any other questions?
Your schedule says you're working on the construction of Village Pond Park. Where does that stand right now? How far into the process are they, and what are they doing?
They have obviously started construction out there. They're doing the kind of the rough grading, moving the dirt around, trying to find its place. We're also in the process of draining the lake. We're finding some very interesting objects in the lake. We obviously, at some point, we think we're going to find actual wildlife, turtles and other things, but so far we've found a skateboard, a wheelchair, a Buddha statue, some cups. We think we're going to start a little glass case, perhaps in the back of the council chambers here, with all the artifacts that we find, because it's
No dead bodies?
not so far. None of that either. But there's quite a bit of lake to drain. We still got about a 9-foot. It's actually receding from the edges, because it's not like a swimming pool with flat sides. It kind of tapers out and gets deep in the middle. So we've got a long way to go. There's a rumor that there's a motorcycle in there somewhere. So we are all looking and hoping to find what that motorcycle might be. So we'll have to see. But we're probably about 25% done right now. There's still a lot of work to do out there, and how do I say this? Sometimes, as with any big construction project, contractors and agencies sometimes don't agree on things, so we're having a little bit of an issue with the contractor over some of the quantities of dirt. So needless to say, that never helps in terms of our schedule. But obviously, and it's also been revised. You're aware the council has renamed the park to Veterans Park. So we're going to be changing the monument. We're also going to be incorporating a kind of a special reflective area for veterans in the park. So anytime you change a project in midstream, you're going to add costs and you're going to add time. So all of those things are going forward. But we think we think it'll enhance the park in terms of the overall presentation to the public out there. So, but yeah, probably about 25% done. And if any of you ever like, a tour or anything, let us know. We'll hook you up. We'll take you out there with a hard hat, and you'll feel free to get behind the fences, and we'll show you what's going on.
Field trip. Ready? Okay, so we are going to move right along to the consent calendar unless anybody else got any more questions. All right, so is there a motion for the consent calendar?
We had one other item on presentation. That was code enforcement. I believe that was in your packet. Daryl is not with us this evening, but if you had any questions or concerns, you can give me a call, and I'll get the information for you. And with that, we could move to the consent calendar for approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded.
If
Let's
I
vote.
may, Chair, I believe that 2 persons were not at the meeting. Okay, thank you.
So let's vote. Motion carries with 2 abstentions. All right, so we're going to move on to item 4, discussion of the schedule for upcoming traffic-related items.
Yes, the main star on the agenda this evening, and Dave Rogers has a report for this item.
All right, here we are. Meat and potatoes while you're here tonight, right? As you recall, in our first couple of meetings as the Planning and Traffic Commission, we were looking at some educational items for you, but we were also lurking in the background was the council and what other ideas and studies that they might want to have the Planning and Traffic Commission look at. It took them a couple meetings to kind of get all their thoughts to staff so that we could incorporate them into a report and then turn that around and them for their priorities. As a result, the council has discussed this and decided to add one, what I'll call fairly large study to your work program beyond a couple of ones that they had kind of already approved through the budget process. The ones they approved through the budget is the Traffic Signal Master Plan and your annual collision. The one that they asked you to also review is a review of protected permissive left turn phasing. Everyone familiar with that enough that you've probably driven through it in places like you've been to Huntington Beach or Fountain Valley, and that's where you get your protected movement. We'll call it the green arrow, typically first, followed by an opportunity to make left turns in gaps in opposing traffic. We don't have any here in Lake Forest. I'm not aware of any currently in South Orange County, although I haven't driven San Clemente, maybe I could. But generally speaking, they're fairly uncommon in our area. And so we're going to approach this carefully and cautiously. Commission member Armando can probably recall a discussion at our Citizens Traffic Advisory Group, which was our temporary traffic commission for a while there. We kind of went back and forth on this, and there were some guidelines that had been adopted by Orange County Traffic Engineering Council, and a lot of our intersections here did not appear to be very good candidates. So we talked about at the CTAG and ultimately recommended to the council that perhaps nothing or perhaps we should probably not look at converting existing ones, but look at it for potential future signals. The council has now decided that no, they actually want us to go back and look at the city as a whole and see if there's any locations where it might be reasonable to permit permissive turns where there currently are only protected turns. So we'll come back with you very, very late in the fiscal year. I've currently got it scheduled for June. We probably will get it back to you a little bit sooner than that, but we want to make sure we give our consultants plenty of time to look at this. One of the reasons it got pushed forward was because the City of Irvine recently completed a fairly extensive traffic study, which included protected permissive. They are actually going to that at 6 locations, but it's on the minor side street. You can imagine in Irvine, if you've driven through there, you scratch your heads a lot of times. They have these little tiny side streets, residential streets that have protected left turns. From a traffic engineer's perspective, for no apparent reason. Well, that's just how the Irvine Company built things back in the day. And so they're taking at 6 locations, they're taking those protected turns on those little minor side streets and converting them to protected permissive. Here in Lake Forest, similar intersections are already permissive only. And so that's, for comparison, kind of what they did after a citywide study versus some of the things we already have here today. So it'll be an interesting study. It'll take a long time to get done, and obviously we'll bring that information back to you along with the other 2 major studies. In addition to that, we have all our educational items. The next one up on your agenda is going to be basically the parking, residential parking program that we have here. I think that's probably the next and most important thing that you get up to speed on, because it is most likely the area in which you are going to we're going to have the public here asking questions about, and so being versant in that to a certain degree. Obviously, you can always rely on staff, but being versant to that I think is important, so that'll be the next educational item we'll be bringing to you. And the schedule we have is tentative. We can move it around if you collectively feel that there's some different order that you'd like them in. Some of them are driven by the fact we need to hire consultants to come out and do things. But if you've had a chance to look at it, if you're kind of comfortable with it, we can obviously even morph it going forward. But that was kind of staff's first crack at what we think we would like to present to you in the order in which we'd like to present them.
And I'll bring this up at the appropriate time, but with the protected permissive turns, I know working in Huntington Beach, we had an intersection, and I'm sure we can get the stats, but Magnolia and Adams went from a protected to protective permissive, and after a certain amount of time, they had so many left turn right-of-way accidents that they went back to protected left turns. I'm really in favor of protected left turns.
It's a very common thing. I will tell you, in my career, I spent a lot of time in the city of Laguna Niguel. Very early in my career there, we converted about 6 intersections to protected permissive, and within a couple of years, we had put them all back. And it was unfortunate. We just had a lot of collisions that otherwise would not have occurred, and we collectively decided at the city that it just was something that the drivers just were not accustomed to, and it was just problematic. And there's a lot of those stories out there. Doug, who comes with me here sometimes, has a very similar story for the city of Tustin. So they've improved some of how the signals work, and they work better in our coordinated systems now, but you still are taking something that is, requires very little thought on the part of drivers and turning it into something where it does require thought, concentration, and judgment, and it'll be interesting to see what our study reveals.
Wow, so all that success, and we're looking into it? Why are we looking into it?
Because the city council asked us to.
All right. So does anybody have any questions of Mr. Rogers? Wow, that was a great presentation. Nobody has any questions. Oh.
I can see all of you. I think somebody's reaching for a button.
On that subject, help us out from the point of view of the council. What do they think they're going to achieve by doing that?
Well, I think, and it's not an uncommon concern. Our member of the public here mentioned tonight that sometimes it feels like there's more delay today than perhaps there used to be in the past, and part of it is true for certain movements because of how we choose to favor the primary movements now. But there's a sense that at certain times of the day, at certain locations, perhaps traffic is light enough that we no longer need 100% positive control for the left turns, that we can allow people to make decisions for themselves. So I think it comes out of things they're hearing, things that they're also experiencing on the roadways themselves, and I think that's where that thought came from and why they're asking staff and the commission to study.
How does the light, I'm not familiar with these at all. I don't drive in Huntington Beach. I get lost every time I go to Huntington Beach. What do they look, what changes in that green arrow to make you say, okay, now you have to judge, and now you have to think, and now you have to...
It's the way that I'll call it the signal head that sits out on the end of that arm that kind of hangs out near where the left turn movement is, will look different. It will have more indications in it now. Typically it'll have the three arrows, and then it'll also have a green ball and a yellow ball with it. So the green ball, when it comes up, along with typically a sign or something, when that comes up, that's saying, okay, now it's your turn to make a decision. So we don't have them here, and like I said, they're relatively uncommon, even in Orange County proper. There aren't a lot of cities that have them. So
sometimes you'll see the green ball, and sometimes you'll see a green arrow.
Correct.
And so you just have to, and so if
you really
for 5 days you go through it and it's a green arrow, and then you are kind of sleeping on the 6th day, you could go through a green ball and get hit.
You really got to pay attention.
Yeah, okay.
More so than normal,
right.
yes.
It was interesting. I was in Park City last week, and they've got a couple of adaptations of that, where you have the green left turn arrow, then you get a flashing yellow arrow. And it's the same idea.
Correct.
It drives people crazy. The problem is they implemented it on really busy, like a highway where you just got off the freeway or where people are getting on the freeway. They did it in downtown on Main Street where it was really busy, and I couldn't quite figure out why they did that, because maybe one car gets through on the flashing yellow before it turns red.
That's an attempt, a new style to try and see if somehow if the green ball wasn't effective, and that's kind of where so the engineers are going, what else can we try, what else can we try? And so that's one of the newer concepts, is instead of a green ball, now it's a flashing yellow arrow, like, okay, yellow, caution, I turn, or it will take, if the commission heads that way, and if the council heads that way, it will take a lot of education to try and let people help people understand what those changes might look like. And so it's like I say, it'll be interesting to see what the study reveals and where we go with that. But it's in a world where distractions seemingly are increasing exponentially. I'm just, like I say, my professional experience and personal experience hasn't been very positive with these types of changes in traffic control. And that's come from somebody, and I'm a kid who grew up in L.A. In L.A., there weren't hardly any protected left turns. You know, you and two other cars pulled forward, and when the light went yellow, all three of you went. And that's kind of, it wasn't a lot of decision making because there was never any gaps in traffic. You just pulled forward, and the three of you just went on the left, on the yellow. But
well, and I think the initial perception that I had, because that was the first time I had actually seen it. And the perception is, and it's not safe, that, well, yeah, it's yellow, you can still move and you're protected, but you're not.
Correct.
And that to me, I think, is where a lot of the problem comes from, because people don't really know what to expect when that happens.
Right, because you're so used to use an example here. When we see yellow arrow, we think it's changing, but I've got the right of way to go. And so you're right. Trying to change the mindset after decades driving in an environment where the protected left turn is the only thing you've seen would be a monumental educational process to get through.
Thank you.
I was when I rode to Alaska, going through Canada, going through some intersections, they had a flashing green light.
Yes.
And I still don't know what that means. whatever.
When I was a candidate, I saw the
Slow
same
down,
thing. Yeah.
I'm not sure what
I
that
think
meant.
I think it's intending to tell you I'm going to be changing soon.
Well, you'd think,
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway.
You didn't tell them that you were from the Lake Forest Traffic Commission.
He just kept going.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, the traffic control systems we have now, the sequencing, et cetera, you can set those for specific time frames too. So let's say during the day when you've got volume traffic, you could set it potentially with a green and a green arrow during that time. And then in the evening, the late evening, go to the green and the green permissive.
Correct. The current, yes.
We could look at time
in
frame.
the past, the early versions of protected permissive was
Yeah, well,
it's on all the
right.
time. Period. End of story. The newer versions, you can you can turn it on for certain times of the day, turn it off for other
Right.
times of the day. And in those circumstances, is what you're describing is why they came up with that idea. Is because sure, in the middle of the night, at 2 a.m.,
Right,
probably okay to do it. The question is, now again you're introducing something. Well, sometimes I can do it, sometimes I can't.
Right.
How do I get to it? But you're right. That's exactly why that was changed, is to try and attempt to say, okay, well, it's fully protected, during all the heavy peak times, but between 10 and 5 a.m. Okay, we'll allow it. So yeah, it's constantly being worked on and looked at and tweaked to try and find the right combination.
With regard to the items that you got listed and scheduled, I noted that the collision study is not until December.
Yeah, let me explain that one. We just got the program here. It's something I had used for 20-something years in my previous job. When I got here, we had no tools. So I was able to get the council to provide some money to buy it. But what happens is you get in this case, about a 15-year data dump. And what happens is the information is prepared, as Mark certainly knows. You prepare a traffic report, or a local agency prepares a traffic report, and then it gets sent to their local office, and then it gets sent up to the CHP, which is the clearinghouse for all of this information. Our database comes back to us from the CHP. Well, anytime anything gets touched 3 or 4 times, you start to get Geronimo Lane, Geronimo Road, Geronimi Lane, and what I have to do is I have to go through all that data and correct it all to make sure that when we query the system, we're not missing information and collisions. So it's a lot of work to go through and fix it. But once you've fixed it, next time you update it, any similar changes will automatically correct. And then the amount of data that you have to fix is relatively small. But it's that initial effort to clean up a couple decades worth of data is going to take a long time. And so I didn't want to, honestly, every time I turn around to do that on the computer, I get about 3 things done, and then I'm off doing something else. And maybe I'll have to try our new intern to do it or something. But you got to have you got to have the right eye. And it's a little sensitivity thing. So it's going to take a while, and otherwise I would love to bring it to you. I think it's a great tool to help us understand how we compare to others and things that we might need to look at.
Yeah, good.
Everybody's good? No more questions? All right, so we're going to go directly into direct.
I wanted to remind the commissioners that I sent a survey, I believe it's from Management Partners, and if you'll complete that and send that in, that's in regards to the city's 5-year strategic plan. And later in September, the City Council will be having a workshop, and you will be invited to come watch if you would like to. But this is the chance we sent the survey to both the Park and Rec Commission and the Planning Commission so that we could gather your input in that process. And then I just wanted to mention that this is Peggy's final tour stop on Planning Commission Secretary, and thank you to Peggy for an amazing 17 years of service to the Planning Commission. And she's going to Public Works Department as a management aide, and it's a great career move for Peggy. We'll miss her, and we'll bring in a new secretary that will take the next 17 years for you guys.
Great. How about you, Hung Dao?
No comment.
Okay. So I'll start then and echo Gail. Peggy, thank you very much for your 17 years of service. And, you know, for us, it's only been about 3 or 4 for most, well, except for Dave. Dave's been here for 27 years or something like that. But great, best to you in Public Works. I'm just envisioning that we're going to have like a new influx of geocaching all over the city, themed at the different times of the year, like our little snacks that we get every time. So at Easter time, we can drive down Lake Forest, and there'll be little Easter bunny chocolates for us to find. So I'm sure you got it? All right. All right, and thank you, Dave, for a great report.
Just, I'm hoping that you might be involved in training the new person, giving him or her the little, showing them the ropes, so hopefully. Do we have somebody picked already? Or?
Well, we're in good hands. Our temporary happens to have just retired from the city of Anaheim, where she's been the administrative specialist for Mr. David Belmer, who was here for many, many years. So Simone Fannin will be with us for a couple of weeks, and we actually are holding interviews for Peggy's position next week, so we may have someone probably in a meeting or two for you to meet. And yes, Peggy will be assisting in training.
And don't forget the snack portion. Okay, good, thanks.
Peggy, I just want to thank you for all the work that you've done for us. We've really appreciated it, and you've been very diligent and very conscientious, and the snacks are wonderful. The ones I can't eat, my wife has loved. But I really wish you well in your new position, and thank you so much for your years of service with the city. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, hey, Peg, I'm glad I'm back. Sorry I missed the last 2 meetings, but I was afraid I had missed Peg's last time, because we go back a long, long way. Of the 19, she was here for 17 of the 19 I was initially here, so I can remember when the cookies and candies and cakes started showing up. It was sort of interesting. Learned a lot, and she's helped us really stabilize what the group was doing, and really appreciate it. It's been great working with you. Okay. And with that, like I say, I'm sorry I missed the last couple of meetings. We had a medical thing we've had to deal with, my family. And secondly, anybody that's looking for an adventure trip, I have one for you. Take the whitewater rafting trip down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon. I would not suggest hiking out. It is almost killed me. But that is fabulous trip. The food is fantastic. The tour people are just wonderful, and it is exciting beyond imagination. So, but it's glad to be back. I'm really glad I'm here.
Peggy, thank you for your support. We're going to miss you. Well, not really, I guess. I guess we'll have to go in and visit you. I had a question. I can't remember what I read, or did I miss it? Is there a mission statement now for the Planning and Traffic Commission?
I can't remember, Gail.
I will get that for you. There were some changes made. There's Planning Commission guidelines. They're codified in the municipal code. And so when we changed it to make it the planning and traffic, it has a list of duties that the Planning Commission had, and I think a few duties were added under traffic. But I'll pull that up for you, send that out to the commission.
It's coming. And then last meeting you mentioned there were some dates for some sessions. When we can, I'd like to know what those dates are, because usually my calendar starts to book up 45, 50 days ahead.
Sure, we'll gather some dates for you. I think we're talking about the annual planning forum.
Yeah.
There's the state conference in Sacramento, and the strategic plan workshop.
Yeah, please. That's all I have.
Okay. I would highly suggest and recommend that we add the Colorado River rafting trip to the Planning Commission opportunity to go and visit for one reason and one reason only. You know how adamant I have been about taking and removing our little hills and contours and things of that nature, because once they're gone, they're gone. And one of the things that was very interesting with regard to this trip is the stuff that they're trying to do within the Grand Canyon as far as development is concerned. And it's a study that's out there right now of, you would not believe what they're trying to put into the Grand Canyon that will destroy it forever. And it's one of those things that I think is incumbent upon commissions to understand that when you lose the contour of the land, you've lost it forever. You'll never get it back. And I think that's a valuable thing that I picked up on this trip.
And I think we could probably kind of add the traffic commission to that too. There's probably a little traffic down there
I'm
too.
sure,
Yeah.
sure, you know, when they get into these studies, they're going to find out that there's going to be congestion, people, you know,
Yeah,
people
yeah.
walkways, et cetera, et cetera.
Definitely.
So
Can
there's
you
a
just
lot-
go ask city council? All right. With that, I think we will adjourn to our next regularly scheduled meeting, which will be the 24th of August. So thank you and good night.